Hello and welcome to the Unpublished Writers Club, the podcast for aspiring authors, writing enthusiasts, or any creative out there. Whether you're at the start of your writing journey, in the process of being published, or just someone curious, everyone has a place here to connect, explore, and perhaps learn a thing or two. I'm your host, Zia, an officially recent graduate of university doing a Bachelor of Creative Arts with a big focus on creative writing. And over the past 6 years, I've been learning, failing, and putting myself out there for the sake of making a career out of writing. And so while I'm still at the start of my writing journey, I want to bring you all along with me to share what I've learned and am in the process of learning still, in the hopes of making your navigation of this journey just a little bit easier. Last episode, which was technically 4 months ago, I'm sorry, I've dropped the ball on it completely. I did a podcast episode all about why you should go to university. In that episode, I really wanted to include then also aspects of why you shouldn't go to a university, but it got too long because I just had so much to say about the benefits of it that I ran out of time. And so this episode, I want to go all in on why it's actually potentially not a good idea. Last episode, I mentioned about it being very based on your circumstances, which for me, I've been very, very blessed with mine, and I'll get into that a lot more this episode. But I just think it's very important to factor in both sides of the consideration to make sure that it is what you need, because as you'll soon learn, there are so many other options and a lot of things to consider, more than just the positives mentioned in the last episode. I think the main takeaway from this episode is that university is not necessary to write or make a career out of writing. In fact, usually it's not how it goes, but obviously it's a great way to fast track and learn and get a lot of experience. Before we get into this episode, I want to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the beautiful Australian land I get to record this podcast on, and just acknowledge their enduring ties to land and nature and sea, as well as the beautiful community that we get to all share together. They are the original and enduring storytellers of this land as well, the very first ones, and it is just pivotal to acknowledge them and to cherish that history. I also wish to extend that respect to elders past and present, as well as any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders emerging and listening today. So let's get into it. These days, the first segment of this podcast is sharing my work in progress, which I'm very happy to note the draft that I was working on last year is officially complete. The first draft of it, I should say. I finished it up in NaNoWriMo, which I did for the first month, which, if any of you don't know what that is, it's November is considered the sort of national writing month, I believe, in the United States, but it's something the rest of the world has sort of jumped on as a nice challenge, and the goal is to write an entire novel in that month. While I didn't do that, that is intense, I just challenged myself to participate in it by writing every single day, and from that I was able to actually finish my first draft that I've been working on, which is so exciting. It did burn me out a bit though, I will admit that. Juggling NaNoWriMo and my university finals was probably not the smartest move, so I've taken a break and I'm hopefully getting back into it this month, if not next month, and hopefully by the time I update you again, I've made some decent progress in the second draft, which is going to be so exciting. A lot of working on the structure and just the general world building. I really want to get into a bit more, just making it something better than what it is, but again, the first draft only needs to exist, so I'm so happy that I have that. And these past few months that I've been taking a break from it, I've obviously still been thinking so much and trying to figure out the kinks in it and all sorts of things, so I can really just get sailing away when I do sit back behind that laptop again and get to really prioritize it this coming month. So for the actual episode at hand, why you should not go to university, I want to start by saying why I did go to university, and acknowledge that not everybody can go to university or even should go to university. I come from a culture here in Australia where it's getting more common to not go to university, and it's very much a choice. Unlike I think in the States, it's still quite a new concept to not go to university, or I guess college for them, after school, high school. But here in Australia, yeah, it's very much more of a choice and just something that I wanted to do for my confidence levels, as I mentioned last episode. But for many others in the world, it's just not a possibility at all, which is so heartbreaking because everyone at least deserves that choice. Not even for university, but some people still don't have the ability to go to high school, or in some cases even primary school, which is absolutely gut-wrenching. I wanted to acknowledge some of these places because it is such an important thing to be aware of and to keep talking about so that it can be something that we continue to tackle. I know there are some incredible organizations and people trying to tackle these problems already, and I'll link some of them below because it's so important to support them. But places like Afghanistan, girls can no longer go to school after the age of 12 years old. That might even still be changing with what's going on there. In Ethiopia, 2 in 5 girls are actually married before they even finish school, so they drop out of high school. And in the Central African Republic, there's actually only 1 teacher to every 80 students. So I am so blessed here in Australia that I, first of all, have the right to even go to university, that I have the teachers and the resources available to be able to teach me in such a beneficial way. And obviously, I'm able to choose whether or not I go to university, whether I get married, or what my life and the plans I wish to live out for myself are. So it's just such a sad reality to also acknowledge, but again, something that we should all be striving for because everyone deserves to be able to go should they choose to. There is an article that I'll also link below which discusses more of these reasons why especially young girls don't go to either high school or university, but the main reasons are, as mentioned, it's a lot of conflict, just general cultural norms. Child marriage is a big one that is still persevering, and then teacher shortages. So again, I really want to acknowledge how fortunate I am here in Australia. While there are cons to it, it's just such a big pro that I can even have the choice to go. In terms of the blessed circumstances I have even beyond that, because even though I have the choice and Australians have the choice to go to university, many still aren't able to go, and that is for reasons like working. I, for one, lived at home my entire university career, and that was great because I didn't actually have to work full-time. I didn't need to work full-time or pretty much work at all, so I could focus on my studies. But for those of us who do live out of home or do need to work to survive, which is so many people, that is the norm, it is a lot harder to go to university and prioritize that because it's just not something that I guess relates to survival in that moment in time. For those of you who are in that position, that's why I'm making this episode, because it doesn't mean that you are completely behind or that you cannot write, because there are so many other options which I will be getting into later. I also have very blessed circumstances in the sense that no one depends on me. I do not have children. I have no loved ones who require my attention or care. I very much sometimes I'm not even good at taking care of myself, and other people step in, and I am so lucky for that, especially throughout university. So again, that's just another thing to factor in, is that if you have people depending on you in any way, it's hard to then prioritize just yourself and your studies. And I really need to acknowledge that too, because it's just a reality that is different for other people. And so I can't be here harping on about why university is so good and that everyone should go, because not everyone can go. And I completely see that and acknowledge that, and I don't think that you should, again, be forcing yourself into anything that you actually can't take on at this point in time. So elements like those, like my living situation, my dependence, or my general ability to take out student loans or just go to university in general, puts me in such a better situation to even just consider going to university than I know many other people don't have. So that's why, again, I really am excited to endorse some other ways of furthering your writing career if that's what you want, especially in a way that is accessible to the majority of people, because university isn't. Because I was in that better position, university did allow me to fast track not only my knowledge and my experience, but also then my networking and travel, which is not something people consider, but I got to travel so much through my university. Fast track is the word to say there, because I wholeheartedly believe that anyone else can also have those elements without university, but just not all at once or as fast as I did going through university. And even those who are at university but have some of those other circumstances that I don't, they can't drop everything and just go traveling, or, you know, go to all these networking events if they have to work, or they've got family members who need them, or any of those sorts of reasons. So that's also something to acknowledge as well. But while there are downsides generally, there are also downsides for me. So for anyone in any situation, you still have to weigh up the pros or cons, and so these are some of the ones that I had to weigh up. First one is definitely the expense. In Australia, university is not free. I know in some European countries and other countries around the world, free university is an option. That sounds incredible. It sounds like what it just generally should be, because especially for those jobs that are necessary to society, such as scientists or doctors or teachers, they should be free to access and educate yourself on. But unfortunately that's not the case here in Australia. And for me, I was at a private university, so the cost was even more. But I was lucky enough that the government enables us to take out school loans, pretty much, that I then don't need to pay off until I'm making a certain amount of money. And so that is something that I had to take into consideration if I was willing to even take that on, and take that on then at an even larger level, because I was at a private university and not a government one, which has cheaper fees but still very much expensive over the course of your entire university degree. There are also credentials that you can get online, which range from being, you know, very expensive, like tens of thousands of dollars like university is, to potentially hundreds of dollars, if you do want the actual credentials and that acknowledgement of study and experience. So that is something to consider when it comes to fees. But what I've found is that people want experience more than anything. You don't need a degree behind you, especially in the field of writing. They want you to prove that you have actually written, and they want to see the work that you've done. So if you only have so much time in a day, it is probably more important for you to actually sit down and write than for you to go to university and take on a study load, as well as working on your own projects or just general assignments. The second downside is time. Majority of the university degrees here in Australia are about 3 to 4 years, with 2 semesters during the year. Mine was fast tracked, so it was 2 years long, and I did trimesters, but that did mean that I had pretty much 2 to 3 weeks breaks in between my semesters, including over Christmas, and that was very hard. It then required me to do everything I could in my power to not get burnt out, which included not working as much as I could have if I was doing a normal university load. I also then added more classes on to, again, make sure that it was faster as well, which was a lot in some points. And so that is another thing that you really have to consider, is that it is a big commitment. It takes a lot of time, and whilst you may only be going to classes for a few hours in a week, there are still those exams and the homework and assessments and things you have to do on top of it. That just takes a lot of time. That does mean that if you do have a job, if you do want to then do internships as well, or work on your own projects, it's really hard to balance it all with just a general life. I just didn't have a life pretty much outside of university. The final downside that I think is important to mention is that university is just not as accessible. Obviously, I've mentioned that some people aren't able to even go to university. That's not a choice for them. But even if you have the need for different learning plans or different learning speeds or it's just time consuming, so it's not as accessible to you because you don't have the room on your plate to fit that on. I think it's just really important to note that it's not so flexible in a way that could be then accessible to majority of people. If you need extra support or altered learning programs, it's hard to do in a traditional university structure, especially like I did fast tracked. It was just probably impossible for it to be slowed down if I needed more time and that kind of thing. I was fortunate enough that my university was smaller and it had a lot of resources, which meant that I was able to get pretty much one-on-one tutoring either from students or from different academic advisors. But it was such an incredible resource to have to keep me where I needed to be. But for those people who need even more support, I would say factor that in, because it's very common, I think, for especially big universities. I've heard from my friends, there just isn't that much support. They aren't able to even ask their teachers questions a lot of the time. They don't have the same level of academic resources that I was fortunate enough to experience. So if you do very much want to go to university and that's something that you want to do for whatever reasons, that's great. Just potentially then alter your course and maybe do a couple units in a semester rather than a full study load, or pick a university which has smaller class sizes so that you can have relationships with your teachers and be able to ask them questions. My teachers were incredible enough that a lot of them actually read my drafts and gave me comments and things so that then I could keep working on it before an assessment was due, which for a class of 15 or 20 students is possible, but for majority of Australian universities who have classes of 50 to 100 plus is very much not possible. So definitely factor that side in if you are very much wanting to go. Now is what I think is going to be my favorite part of the episode, which is non-university substitutes for you to consider. And these are based on your reasons for wanting to go to university. So for the very first one, if you're wanting to go to university for general knowledge and just growth, there are so many other resources available, such as writing education sites. For example, I've preached Readsy before. I still very much stand by it. It has so many different resources, both paid and unpaid, so you can just utilize the free resources if you want, depending on your budget as well. I also think that YouTube is such a valuable resource, especially YouTube from professionals. For example, Brandon Sanderson does so many great lectures and he just puts out so much incredible content that you can literally just go and sit and study for yourself. There are so many books that you can utilize as well. If you go onto university pages and into their writing programs, you can look at the resources that they give out to students or that they require students use. And there are resources such as Save the Cat, which is a quintessential writing book. And you can use those books and study them for yourself without having to go through the actual university degree. So for example, Save the Cat is a book. There are so many websites that are used by teachers and things as well that you can find by doing a little bit of a stalk on different university pages. And honestly, even utilize LinkedIn and see what professionals out there are putting out, whether they are articles about writing or the structure of writing. There is so much. For me, at the very start of my writing journey, I just looked up authors that I admired and that I enjoyed reading, and I found like decades old blog posts from them about their first novels that they wrote and that kind of stuff, and I thought it was just such a cool tool that maybe not everyone is utilizing, because there is so much out there that you can use. If you want to go to university to get out of your comfort zone, which is a big reason why I went, I would say go all in on writing competitions. Utilize social media, potentially create your own page to share your work, and this can be done anonymously, which is really great. Or if you want to be even more confident, you can put your own face and name to it. And join writing groups. You can do this again via Facebook, potentially even Discord groups or Reddit groups. There are so many out there that you can utilize to share work, to get feedback on, to give feedback to other people too, to be able to see what they're doing and how it works for them. I think you can utilize the internet, especially today, as a good way to get out of your comfort zone. If you want to go to university to network, I would say join memberships. There are so many writing memberships out there, both in the whole of Australia, in different states, in different towns, and then also on a global level. So you can become a writing member and either get to go to meetings or utilize their resources, or just show that you are part of this industry and that you want to be in it and that you are prioritizing it, even if you can't go to university. Hopefully that way you could potentially find a mentor as well, or just create good friends and find out about new opportunities and things. Facebook groups, again, shout out to them, is a great way to network. You can do it for specific genres or just general writing, or where you're at in your writing journey. I think they are so valuable as well, and people are just, again, so willing to share if you are open and willing to listen. Finally, for networking, I think do writing festivals. You can go to them in person. There are plenty that are online. They are a bit more costly, but you could also volunteer for writing festivals so that you get in and still learn a lot of their information for free. And then that's another way that you can just network, by even getting to work with the authors or different industry people because you are helping them, because you're a volunteer. I think that could be a really great way to get into it all as well. If you want to go to university for more opportunities, my first recommendation is do writing workshops. These are potentially linked to writing festivals. They do a lot of writing workshops before or after a festival, or just throughout the year, or there are plenty of organizations out there that do it just generally without a festival, and that you can go to. You have the opportunity to write for or showcase your work as well. Again, with writing groups and Facebook groups, you get more opportunities because they are putting in things like competitions or mentorship programs, or potentially even online programs that you can participate in and follow. If you follow agents on social media for whatever aspect of the writing industry you want to be part of, they also do a lot of shout outs for different opportunities as well. You can also follow publishing houses, agent houses, and just any other industry person that you can find on social media. Just utilize it. Finally, if you are wanting to go to university for extra credentials that you could potentially put on your resume, there are so many online courses that you could utilize. You could go to TAFE as well, which is much more financially accessible to people. And also, if you do need extra support, TAFE can also be free. For example, if you need extra mental health support, I believe they a lot of the time will waive costs. And utilizing masterclasses, I remember being so jealous of people who were able to do Margaret Atwood's masterclass back when she did it a few years ago, because that is all I wanted to do, and I really considered saving up to be able to do it, just to hear from such an incredible well of knowledge would have been so cool. So utilize those masterclasses that people do put out. But first, obviously, I'd say go down the route of YouTube and those sorts of things, just the free ways. Even if you don't get the credentials for them, that might be a better place to start. But if you do want the credentials, find those sorts of courses that potentially give you a certificate at the end. And finally, if you do the networking and you get the opportunities, try and find a mentorship, and just find one person who's in the industry who can take you under their wing, potentially read some of your work, give you some more opportunities. That could be a great way to get credentials and to be able to put on your resume that, you know, you got to work with this person. The final tip that I have is about the timing of university. Not only is it important to pick the right university, as I mentioned, you could do private or public, you could do small or large, just figure out what is best for you and your needs. The timing of when you go is something to consider. For me, I went straight from high school to university. I finished my high school exams in November, and then I started my first class of university in January that following year. I personally did that because I didn't want to lose my momentum. I felt that I was in a really good place at the end of high school in just my ability to put so much time and effort into studying and have that be a habit. But if you want to take a year off, if you want to take a decade off, if you didn't even finish high school, that is also okay. I think the main thing that you need to know about the timing of university is that the degree, the university, the chance is always going to be there. It's not something that you have to seize now or give up completely. You could go back as a mature age student, you could do it when you're 80. You honestly have so many chances and they're not going anywhere. So if now is not the time in your life for you to go to university, but that is something that you really, really want, don't give up on that dream, because you can go and you can do it in a way that benefits you most, where you are able to prioritize it in a way that is most beneficial to you and makes you feel empowered and happy, and most of all safe in every other aspect of your life as well. So that concludes my reasons why you should not go to university as an aspiring author. While there are specific negatives and positives for me, every person's situation and their positives and negatives are going to be completely different. So just make sure that you are putting yourself and your circumstances first. And just know that whatever choice that you do make, your dreams are still valid and very much possible, which is probably the most exciting thing. So thank you so much for listening. I hope this has been a helpful episode for you if you are trying to figure out whether or not to go to university. And next time, and next month, most likely, I will be back with another episode of the Unpublished Writers Club. Until then, make sure you check out the links below and send any questions you have for me to potentially answer in the future. Thank you so much. I will see you next time.